I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cultworthy. I'm your host, Antonio, and here we are in part 2 of our 2025 High School Royale episode. Now, last week, we paired up my pick, which was Tough Turf, starring James Spader, against Justin's pick, which was The Principal, starring Jim Belushi and Louis Gossett Jr. Now, I'm a fan of both films, but Justin hated Tough Turf. It happens. We bring movies to this episode, and sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't. For the most part, I feel that Justin's been more critical of my films than I've been of his, but whatever. So this week, we are bringing 2 new films to the show-off. I am bringing one of my favorite hidden gems of the 80s, Albert Pune's film, Dangerously Close from 1987. And Justin, what film are you putting up against it?
So this one's going to be a fun one because I wanted to just get silly this year. I'm doing the one that kicked off Brendan Fraser. I'm bringing Encino Man with Brendan Fraser, Sean Astin, and Pauly Shore.
I mean, it kicked off Brendan Fraser, but it also kind of kicked off Pauly Shore, right? Like, it kind of brought both of their careers in. And I made fun of you a little bit when you picked this one because it is kind of an easy one. It's a gimme. It is a favorite amongst people, but upon this rewatch, I had a very different opinion about parts of it, and I can't wait to get to it. But let's go ahead and just jump right into the conversation. Dangerously Close, I'm assuming, was a first-time watch for you.
It was a first-time watch, and I think this year we have to have a serious talk on why you pick teenagers that always end in a climatic warehouse fight. So I think I have seen more teenagers in warehouses in film this year than I ever thought I would. So I'll give you that thank you this year.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about this one, because we know you didn't like Tough Turf. It definitely, you had to suspend your disbelief that James Spader was intimidating, for one. You had to kind of suspend your disbelief that there are these dangerous gangs that are literally killing people and holding women hostage in warehouses. But when it comes to this one, I think it's got a little bit more credibility to the fact that there is a social commentary that actually makes a lot of sense in Dangerously Close that's a little bit looser in Tough Turf. And I think one of the main things we have to talk about is this isn't necessarily a political movie, but watched in today's lens, it echoes a lot of political ideas that we're seeing about people who think that they are the elites and that anyone who is not one of them doesn't belong in society. And what it's done is it's taken that concept and has put it into a high school. Now, it comes off kind of exploitive, which it is. It's an exploitation movie, but the relevance echoes. And that is why I brought it to this year's High School Royale, where Tough Turf, I think, is more fun. There's a lot more cartwheels and dancing and musical numbers, where this one feels a little bit more serious and on the nose, right? This almost feels like an after-school special, but rated R.
Give me the musical numbers. Give me James Spader over this movie, because here's kind of the deal. You're absolutely right. It does have a social commentary. We can kind of see it at a surface level because the execution below the surface just isn't there. But here's where you talk about the easy route when it comes to using teenagers and delivering a message. So we get all that. It's not a well-executed movie at all, but on the surface, we can completely see what this movie is trying to do. We have the Sentinels that are really trying to encourage or run this school so everybody's just like them, where it looks proper, whatever it may be. It's a movie about control, and I get that, but it is so damn uninteresting that there is no bite to it. So I can appreciate the message of the authoritarian figure of the teacher that really doesn't do anything but just give dirty looks into the camera and to the kids. the kids kind of questioning if they're doing right or wrong. All that we kind of question ourselves as an audience to see where this movie's going to go. But the exclamation mark at the end in this climatic warehouse scene just doesn't deliver. But I do appreciate the message it attempts to do.
Okay, well, I'm going to try and convince you about a few more things as we get in this conversation. Before we do, let's get the listeners and the viewers up to speed about what this movie is. So, cue dramatic music. The year is 1986, and director Albert Pyun brings us this teen action thriller that explores themes of authority, justice, and moral ambiguity. Set in an elite high school, the film follows a student journalist who uncovers a disturbing vigilante group called the Sentinels. Composed of privileged students, the group targets peers they deem undesirable, enforcing their own brand of justice. As tensions escalate, violence ensues, blurring the line between protection and persecution. Stylistically, Dangerously Close embraces a slick MTV-inspired aesthetic with moody lighting, stylized camera action, and a pulsating rock soundtrack that amplifies its 80s edge. The film taps into the teenage anxieties around conformity, power, and the abuse of privilege, while offering a critique of authoritarianism in youth culture. Though not a box office hit, Dangerously Close has gained cult status for its bold visual style, provocative premise, and standing as a unique entry in 80s teen cinema. Okay, well, so we have to talk about first. Let's talk about technically, right? So this definitely is a B movie. It's a grindhouse picture, so to speak. But come on, man. For the kind of movie it is shot beautifully. It's got some amazing lighting. It's got a lot of amazing framing, which I guess back in the 80s, if you were watching this on a TV, a 4:3 VHS, you can't appreciate this thing is shot in 35 wide anamorphic. So when you're looking down these high school hallways with all this moody backlighting, it almost feels like a Michael Mann movie or like an episode of Miami Vice. Like there's a lot of style in there. And I think that's why me, like a moth to a flame, I get attracted to pretty things. And I often forgive the substance of the film if it's visually stunning. And like so many people know, if you see the words visually stunning in the hit line of a poster or in a critique, it means the movie's not great, but it looks good, and I will give you that.
So I think I have my Justin movies of emotional manipulation. You have your visual Antonio movies. So I think we've gotten our weakness here. And I will give you that. The film does have some incredible shots. And right from the opening scene, where we have that chase with the mist, the shadows, the light coming from the back, I was hopeful. I was hopeful that this movie was going to give me something. And it that's the hook. We usually get a hook, which most filmmakers would have used the Sentinels, the power trip, maybe something with a character to actually grasp us in. But this is a movie of visuals because we see that right from the opening scene. And that's what really did entice me into following. But the minute the character spoke, this is where it started going downhill. But I will give you that. We have those brilliant visuals, but it is tossed in the garbage when we get the editing. The editing doesn't complement these shots. It really does just go boom, 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 boom. The transition shots are snap of the fingers. And there is a scene as we get into the last 30 minutes where we have, I think, Carrie Lowell, was she sitting on her bed? That absolutely makes no sense why we're transitioning to her just laying on a bed. So these scenes don't add the emotional stake. They don't add that thrill factor to it. Our director does a fantastic job of creating these shots. And then the transitions are like, no, just slow it down a little bit. Let me take at least these shots in so I can appreciate what this movie's trying to do. If we're not going to get that emotional stake, that thrill stake, when it comes to the dialogue or the character delivery, at least let the visuals take me on this journey. And that's what really did ruin it for me. I 100% agree. Again, this looks great, but there's no support to it to really drive this movie home.
I will agree with you on a lot of that. What it feels like to me, this feels like someone doing like a high school fan version of To Live and Die in LA. This feels like very Friedkin-ish, right? I think that the moody shots, the almost like surreal hallway shots of the high school with all that interesting lighting in the mist, I think that feels very Friedkin. I feel like sometimes they even go after some Kubrick style there too. But you're right, the editing is too kinetic and frenetic for this story. But I feel like it is trying to emulate something bigger. I think that the idea of this, though, this kind of like preppy asshole gang of on the surface, they are just security for the high school, but they are actually a deeper kind of cultish sect that will take out undesirables from this high school's population. At first, just kind of like tricking them. At first, kind of getting them into like very harsh pranks, but then those turn more violent and then eventually deadly. And that's where our main character, Danny Lennox, played by J. Eddie Peck, comes in as like our main guy to follow. Now, this is my biggest problem with this movie, and I feel this is an issue with a lot of movies of the 80s. We're just with the wrong guy to tell this story. Like, this guy is so dull. He is so uninteresting, and we have to follow him. It also has the deadly sin of its main villain, Randy, played by John Stockwell, being equally as dull as Randy is. That's a problem. Where does it make up for it? I think the fact that it's got a really interesting group of side characters, like Johnny's gang and Karate Kid. We have that kind of dynamic with the guys in the Sentinels, and they're all really good, but they don't get enough screen time. We just get those moments where they're going to go do some kind of prank or hurt somebody, and then we get to see that energy behind them. That's where all the energy is. And then we've got Kruger, who is like the punk rock kid, sidekick of Danny. He's the best guy in the movie. He lets us know he's the best guy in the movie, and then he fucks off for like 3/4 of the film. And that's a problem. When you give all your most interesting moments to the side characters and then they disappear, it leaves us longing for them when we're stuck with the two dullest people in the movie. And now Carrie Lowell. Okay, so great. Zero chemistry with either of the main characters. So it kind of leaves her floundering, right? That's a problem. Okay, I said all that. But I still dig this movie, man. I still dig the idea that there is this secret gang of preppy asshole students that are eliminating the undesirables from the high school population in the name of keeping up appearances. It's such a relevant story to what we're seeing today in today's climate. It's taking the idea of like, jocks and preps versus greasers. It's the outsiders, right? But it's taking it to the next level. I love all that. I just wish it was a little bit better.
I think you're learning me so well because I had the characters in my back pocket as the next argument. You're right, they are dull. And that's something that could have been a huge difference in this movie because they all just kind of blend together. And I think what really lost my attention is when we have a beginning scene where we have Stockwell come in and kind of talk to the class, and the teacher is, I think it's the teacher because that's my main issue, is the students look like the teachers look like the students unless they have a mustache or they're balding. So
Right.
It's hard to separate these characters on who's the authoritarian, who's the student, who's the good guy, who's the teacher, because there's nothing that separates these characters. And we're just looking for hints, at least at minimum, in the dialogue to tell us who we should be watching, who is going to be relevant. And we don't get that. We just get 1 to 2 sentences per character because for a movie like this, there are a lot of characters with little substance that it really does have to push the thrills. It has to push the message. And none of the characters really do that here because it's almost like everybody's doing a table read where everybody has to get their turn on delivery, even when it comes to the performances. It's a table read performance where we don't feel the stakes, we don't feel the relevance, we don't feel the message driving home. And I think that's what really does pull this movie back is the fact the characters could have added more. This was a casting problem, this was a delivery problem. This movie could have been something.
Yeah.
But when you take the characters and the technical aspects, it's not a direction problem. The direction is fantastic, in my opinion, to an extent, if you take out the character direction and a little bit more control of the editing room.
So, like me being the genre guy in the room, so Albert Pion, he really had his career based in the Charles Band and the Canon Film Group entities. That's where he did a lot of his work. This might be one of his most serious pieces. He did a lot of crazy sword and monster and mutant movies. He did Cyborg, right? So he was really a sci-fi guy. What this feels like to me is this feels like, okay, I want to do something serious. I want to hone my artistic skills into something a little bit more realistic and less fantastical and B movie-ish, right? Get me out of mutants and space monsters and cyborgs. Give me something that's grounded in reality. But here's the problem. He's such a visualist that I think that he doesn't know how to manage directors to bring that realism. Instead, everything's toned down. Because in all of his other movies, they're mutants, they're monsters, they're space robots, right? Everything's big, everything's corny and hammy. And in this one, he's trying to tone it down. I think it's toned down way too much. But visually, it's stunning. So I think this was like in his idea, like supposed to be his prestige picture in a sense, where it's like, I'm doing something real. I got real characters. I got real people. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're right. You can't get that quality of a film if you really are using a whole crew of people that only know how to do one kind of genre. You feel it. You feel it. It looks great, but the editing is too fast for a slower movie like this, And you're 100% right. It feels like it's supposed to be To Live and Die in LA, but it's not. It's something smaller, but it's ambitious. And in this case, I think it's too ambitious, and that's what does affect it. Before we finish off the conversation of Dangerously Close, there is another movie that came out right at the same time, like the same year, and it's called Brotherhood of Justice. And it starred a very young Keanu Reeves and Kiefer Sutherland before they found like a lot of their fame. And it's the exact same story, where Kiefer is like an outsider coming to school, and Keanu is part of this group that takes out undesirables. But before they do, they try and pull him in. They think that there's like something worth saving in him. And there's something to be said about that dynamic trope. I think that if we look at a lot of stories and films from the past, there is something very Brideshead Revisited, you could say Saltburn, where the elite almost have like a pet project, the poor kid. In this case, it's the pool boy, right? And they see something in him and they try to bring him into that world, almost to bridge the gap between the lower income people and these like rich elite assholes. And I think that's a very great dynamic to use in movies, regardless of what era it's set in. But now I feel like we're getting tired of it, right? Where it's like we are tired of the rich assholes bringing in the poor unfortunate guy into their world, trying to turn him. But at the end of the day, he stands by his justifications, right? The Charlie Sheen film, No Man's Land, it's the exact same thing. Charlie Sheen's a rich asshole who steals Porsches just for fun, and he brings DB Sweeney into his world. If you think about it, Point Break's kind of the same way. Fast and the Furious is kind of the same way, where you've got this guy bringing someone in. It's a old-handed way to tell a story, but I'm a sucker for it because a lot of the times it's entertaining.
It's a movie, again, like you said, we've seen time over time over time again when it comes to this. And what really boils down to what makes this kind of movie successful is going to be the stakes, the ending result of where our character is going to take us. And again, when we have characters we don't care about, you have to do a lot more work on the stake building, on everything else behind the background. And that's what we don't get here. And here, it's almost like a movie where you have to outdo your predecessor. You have to have that little bit of shock factor. You have to have at least one character you care about by the time we reach the climax. And this, again, it bleeds into every character looking the same, acting the same. Even the villain is safe. There's no stakes to be built here. And I go back to an Antonio comment. I appreciate the message. I appreciate what it's trying to do with its visuals. And I love it when a movie can save itself from everything happening in the background. And it's a shame that to me, I couldn't find hardly anything other than the direction and the visuals up front and center that saved this movie for me. And I was really hopeful for it.
And before we move on to the next one, I got to give a special call out to our villain here, played by John Stockwell. He did have a very respectful acting career, but he turned into an actually pretty good director. He did the film Cheaters in 2000 that had Jenna Malone. He did Crazy Beautiful with Kirsten Dunst. And then he had the two-punch combination of Blue Crush and then Into the Blue. So some of like I'm going to say the cheesiest but somewhat most addictive movies of the 2000s that I have like a guilty pleasure attachment to, Crazy Beautiful and Blue Crush especially. Good on him, dude. Like sometimes it's those B-movie actors that turn into pretty decent directors. And he's had a pretty good directing career ever since, and a lot of TV stuff. He directed the movie Cat Run with Paz Vega. I think that's a pretty good run there. But anyway, I just had to throw that out there. John Stockwell, I'm proud of you.
No, and you're absolutely right. So he did, and this is one where I think the performance isn't bad. And I want to clarify, it's what they do with the dialogue. The dialogue isn't there. And, there is a lot of talent here. And I think this is kind of the movie that stopped a couple of careers before they got going. It's just
right.
The dialogue didn't support this almost green cast, if you will, to really catapult them into the next projects. So I think if anything, the direction here actually inspired some of these cast members to go behind the scenes of what can potentially happen if you have the right crew with you.
No, agreed. And I think like as a potential direct to video film, which it wasn't, but it feels like it because how it was released, it actually plays and looks better than it really is. So at the end of the day, since I brought Tough Turf and Dangerously Close to the conversation, which are my favorite of those two? Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna have to say Dangerously Close. I love Tough Turf, but for different reasons. I think Tough Turf doesn't look great. I don't think it's shot well in any way, shape, or form. It's the charm of the people in it. It's the Robert Downey Jr., right? It's the Kim Richards. It's the James Spader. Even though I feel he's miscast, I still dig the guy in the role. It just doesn't feel as real as a movie as this one. So I think when it comes to the visuals and the mood that it's trying to create, I do prefer Dangerously Close to Tough Turf. But at the end of the day, I like them both, which is why I brought them. I'm not going to bring movies I don't like.
If I had to pick between the two, at least Tough Turf made me chuckle. Not intentionally, but it at least got a chuckle out of me in some elements. And you have Spader, whose on-screen presence is just there. You will watch him in almost anything. At least that's my opinion. Here, I just couldn't follow one character, and it was a chore. And one thing, at no fault of your own, because I canceled last week, is I had to rewatch it, and I was just more confused this week than I was the first week. So I think if I had the choice, I'd do Tough Turf, hands down.
Tough Turf is a little bit more fun. I mean, if you were looking for fun, Tough Turf is the way to go. It's Robert Downey Jr. shirtless with a bow tie playing the drums for a punk band. It's fun. He comes to a gunfight with two Dobermans. It's
Sold.
Fun. Sold. All right. So now moving on to Justin's second pick of our 2025 High School Royale. You brought ENCINO Man, 1992. I think it's a cheap shot, but I'll let you have it. So anyway, cue dramatic music. The year is 1992, and we follow two high school outcasts, Dave and Stoney, who discover a frozen caveman in Dave's backyard in Encino, California. After thawing him out, they name him Link and attempt to integrate him into modern teenage life. Brendan Fraser plays the caveman with charm and physical comedy, creating a lovable and hilarious character. The film blends slapstick humor with themes of friendship, acceptance, and transformation. Now, while not critically acclaimed, ENCINO Man became a cult favorite for its goofy tone, quotable lines, and its 90s vibe. Pauly Shore's unique comedic style and the film's fish-out-of-water scenarios make it memorable for fans of the era. Silly and far-fetched, it captures a carefree spirit that remains a nostalgic gem for many who grew up with it during the early 90s. Light, entertaining, and full of quirky fun. I mean, so like, I'm old enough to have seen this in the theater. What about you?
Same. It was a theater watch, and again, it's it's not good by any means, but it's a lot of fun. And given the choices that we had, I figured I'd throw it in there just to lighten things up.
And rightfully so, because we actually had a lot of serious movies on the list this year. At least last year, I brought like a comedy and kind of like an action drama, and you kind of did the same. And then this year, we brought three kind of like heavy hitting, violent high school movies. And we don't discuss these things really before we bring them. Like we say, this is my movie, and then we record. So I'm glad you brought this one because it was the palate cleanser. I have a lot of different opinions because I've watched this movie quite a bit through my life, but I haven't watched it in at least 10, 15 years. Like I can't even remember it might be on VHS the last time I watched it, and I don't own it. I had to stream it. So the first thing I'll say is Sean Astin's character of Dave is a total asshole. And I never really picked up on that in my youth because it was like I understood the guy that wanted to be liked, the outsider. He just needs a little boost to make himself better. Guess what? He's still an asshole after the fact. Sean Astin plays that brilliantly. Like, oh, I cannot stand this fucking guy. And the real hero of the movie is Stoney. It's Pauly Shore. He's the one with all the heart. He's the one that has all of the meaning in the movie. And back in the day, we just thought he was the cool guy with the hair and the clothes and the lingo. But yeah, there's a lot of this movie that I did not remember. And it totally hit me in a different way as a grown-up.
Well, Dave is the worst friend you can possibly have because he's in it for himself. Like, he is there to seek popularity. He's there to seek fame. He wants to get the girl, and he doesn't integrate his friend into any of it. So, and what I think is glorious about that is when we take Dave or Austin, when it comes to it, he's the most veteran actor out of the trio here. And
yeah,
everybody else does circles around him, and they actually get better roles in the future, or better box office, I should say, than he does in the coming years. So, and I think that's where he takes his seasoned, if you will, career at that point for granted, where he needs to be relevant in some way. And we see that in the performance where he goes a little bit further with the dialogue when it comes to presenting kind of his body language of being separating his friends. Like, we see almost an arrogance to his performance. And I don't think that's where the character was supposed to go. I think this was supposed to be kind of a linear, kind of just boring guy that really just coasts with his friends. But there is an arrogance as we see the crescendo of his performance going into the end. Even when we get to the ending little dance number at the prom party, you don't want to really root for the guy. Your eyes are on Frasier. Your eyes are on Pauly Shore. You don't care what Dave has to do. And that's due to what he's earned in that performance.
It's such an interesting thing, too, because I like Sean Astin. You know, I like him in lots and lots of movies. I think I like him now in his older years and his more mature roles than I do in some of his younger ones. You know, I think that in the 80s after Goonies, all the things that he was in, he's kind of like the same one-note character. And I don't know what it is about films of the 80s where like we have to have our main hero be so one note so the other characters in the movie shine, right? And I feel like that's totally intentional with this particular film where Dave has to be boring because he's the boring one. There's a reason why no one likes this fucking guy, right? And Stoney is his complete polar opposite. He's the weirdo that like no one's friend with, but everyone's entertained by, right? We all knew that dude. The dude that like, okay, we don't want him to hang out with us, but I hope he's at the party because he's probably going to do something crazy, right? And he plays that to a T. I mean, my guess is that was just Pauly Shore in real life, right? It's like, oh, Pauly's here. Let's watch what he does, but we're not going to take him with us. I think the most important part of the movie, though, is Brendan Fraser's performance as Link, because have you ever seen the test footage from them casting that character from the DVD special features?
I have not.
So one of the screen tests that they did, which they almost went with, was Ben Stiller as Link. And they shoot the whole scene where he's first thawed out and kind of tearing the house apart. And the reason why they didn't use him is because he was too convincing of a caveman. Like, he looked like a caveman. There was no gentleness in his performance or in his eyes. And that's the thing about Brendan Fraser, is no matter what character he is, whether it's good, evil, crazy, whatever, there's always going to be that Brendan Fraser gentleness in the eyes. And that's what really sells this character, right? You don't get that with Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller has a very simian aggressive look on his face all the time. And so they didn't go with him. They went with this guy instead, which works great. And that's how it kind of has to be. It kind of has to be the King Kong aesthetic, right? Where there's danger, there's inherent danger, but also there's a softness behind the danger. And that's what makes that performance great. I love that trio. I love how that kind of comes together. And I'm glad that Aston takes the punch for the team of being the resident asshole of the group, because it needs to be. It needs to be that character to push it through. So it was really fascinating for me to watch this and come from a completely different angle as a kid, where I'm like, wow, Sean Astin's almost kind of like the villain of the movie, and he kind of gets to be the hero, but only because the other two make it happen for him, right? He's nothing without those guys.
So when you bring it up with Ben Stiller, I think I'm visualizing it in my head, and I'm thinking of how that would have thrown the tone. It would have thrown the entire story off pace, because let's boil it down. You said the gentleness in the eyes. It's sex appeal. That's what this movie is. It's complete sex appeal of taking and grooming this caveman into a high school environment. And I'm trying to visualize Ben Stiller walking into a high school with the big eyebrows that he has. And there's
no furrowed brow.
And the brow. There's no sex appeal there. He would have been like every other stereotypical prop that we have thrown in here. So this is where Fraser is brilliant. He adds sex appeal. He adds a genuine kindness. And you're right, he does have the eyes, but he works his entire persona around it. Like, we follow this character throughout because he looks like a high schooler. He has a goofiness to him. So it just overall works. And when you match that with Pauly Shore, I can almost watch these two the entire movie. And when it comes to the boring character, he's just, I hate to say it because I love him, but Aston is a prop here. And he is intended to be the driver, where we can almost picture the director saying, Pauly Shore, improv, just go with it. Fraser, go with it. Do circles around this guy, because that's what's really going to be the enticing, the marketing to it, the memorable piece of it. So that's what's going to make this movie. And this is what we see in Pauly Shore movies going further, is that same character. He owns the movie. Whether you like his comedy or not, you can't deny the energy he brings to each one of his movies and the absolute nuttiness of it.
I mean, well, and it's also just so of its time. It's so locked into the early 90s, because that character doesn't really exist in any other era. Sure, you got the stoners, right, of the 70s and the 80s and the goofballs. You got the Anthony Michael Halls, right? But Pauly Shore really is a product of that era and that time, that weird Gen X retro hippie stoner nerd, right? It's a very specific trope from a very specific time. And I feel that Pauly Shore got less funny the more he distanced himself from that character. I feel that once he did Son-in-Law and this, and then he cut his hair and he did Jury Duty in the Army Now, yeah, there's a lot of fun, but they don't have that persona that you fall in love with. Now it's just Pauly Shore, right? That was the difference. Okay, so I gotta go back to Sean Astin really fast. You said something about like him having the most tenured career, and I think that as he got older, he became more humble with like who he was and what he was, accepting, let's say, his body type and his frame, and really being able to play parodies of himself. I'm not sure if you ever watched the old, I'm going to say like early 2000s, maybe late 90s Goonies special edition, where the main kids, the main cast, and Richard Donner kind of did a group commentary, and it's on video. And something that I recognized in that commentary is so uncomfortable is that as Sean Astin's putting in his little 2 cents and his little quips about the movie, the cast and Richard Donner himself just keep shooting him down. Like, they don't let him talk. And if he says something goofy, they're just like, oh, Sean's trying to be funny again. Like, they totally shit on him. And then it cuts. And then when it comes back, he's gone. So I feel like maybe he did at this time bring an energy to a set or to a crew, because you know how that goes. Those guys probably hadn't seen each other in like 20 years since that movie got made. And then they're all back together again. And then it's just, everything goes right back into places that they left it. And all of a sudden, Sean is like kicked out of the Cool Kids Club. That's what this movie feels like. This is a movie where it's like, get this fucking guy off of the screen. I don't want to hang out with him anymore. And I almost feel like that's the energy that he had maybe in real life at that time. Obviously, that's probably changed. Maybe Lord of the Rings changed it. That whole brotherhood dynamic going through 9 months of hell in New Zealand did it. But I think that's a very interesting thing to look back on, where I think you're right. I think that he did have an energy in these movies that kind of reflected the energy he brought to a set.
Yeah. And when I'm talking about Sean here, I don't want to seem like I'm shitting on him, because
Me either. I'm just being observational.
absolutely. And to be fair, how hard would it be in this movie where you see two actors, high energy, or again, a more veteran actor not to match that energy, to stay in character? That takes a new level of talent to say, I need to keep consistent with this character. I need to be the normal one, if you will, of the trio here. So there is a talent here. And I think he had trouble balancing where this character wanted to go. It's almost like he wanted to show confidence, but he wanted to not be confident in the character. So it's not a complete misstep of the character, but it does take this character down a notch by the time we reach the climax, because we want to root for Dave, but we really can't. The main premise is Brendan Fraser, Link, is supposed to be the catalyst to get him the girl. And we should learn this message of just be yourself, and you know what, you will get the girl, whatever the high school message is. And we don't get that here. We get just kind of, you know what, let's just throw him the girl in a dance scene and call it good. Let's have him kiss. We'll call it good. And I think that's what really holds us back. This must have been a complete confidence downer to Aston when it comes to where he's going to go next, because you have these new actors just dancing around you. And by the time the film goes, the marketing went to these two, not him. That had to be hard for him after the fact. So I know he did School Ties, I think directly after the same release date. That might have given him a little bit of confidence boost. But
Tin Soldiers.
Or Tin Soldiers. So, and I think that might have catalyzed him a little bit more, but it had to be hard for him. And I give him credit on the roles he picked after To an Extent to kind of recognize what kind of actor he was and to stay in his comfort zone, because this had to be a hit to his ego.
Absolutely, man. Think about it. It is so hard to be the straight man anyway, knowing that your two co-stars are literally given permission to do whatever they want around you, but you have to be the one that holds it together. You're the resident asshole of this, of the not only the set, but of the movie. That's hard. And I have all the empathy and sympathy in the world for him in a lot of his movies. I mean, think about Goonies, man. Here you are, you're the main character, but no one gives a fuck about you because you've got Corey Feldman stealing every scene. You got Chunk stealing every scene. And then you've got the Fratellis stealing every scene. And then you've got Josh Brolin being sexy back then as he is now, right? Like, you're just fucking Mikey. That's hard, man, when you have to be the most like milquetoast character of a movie, and that's your career until you become the coolest hobbit in Hobbitdom, I guess you could say. But yeah, so yeah, I think that is such a very, when you're reflective on his characters in that era of his career, I really have like a lot of sympathy towards what he probably had to go through of being the straight guy with all these assholes. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. But at the end of the day, man, I think this is a great movie. I think it holds up. I think that even though it's really locked in the 90s, any generation can enjoy this. And with Brendan Fraser's recent kind of reintroduction into the world, with all of his performances, it's great to go back and see him be this goofy guy. Because this is my favorite Brendan Fraser. Like this kind of Brendan Fraser. This, George of the Jungle, Bedazzled, those are my favorite Brendan Fraser roles. He's a good dramatic actor. He won an Oscar, whatever. These are the ones that I like watching him the most. It feels like I'm at home watching these silly Brendan Fraser roles.
This is why I'm glad he's making a comeback, because he is probably one of the most, if we reflect, one of the more well-rounded actors that can be a George of the Jungle, that can be a caveman, and then can, in his later years, become the whale. So this one where we are bought in, where we don't root for necessarily the character he's playing, we're rooting for him to succeed in executing the character he's playing. So this is one where he is a crowd-pleasing actor, no matter what he does. And I love his early stuff, and I can't wait to see what he's coming out with next, because I know he's going to knock it out of the park. I'm a huge Brendan Fraser fan. And I think when it comes to your first role, if you can play a caveman and win over an audience, that is going to set the ceiling to where your career is going to go. No matter what happens in between, it's going to be the ending journey, the ending result. And I think this is where we have missed him so much, to see where his range can be tested, because in the 90s, he won us over on it. He's a great dramatic actor. He's a great comedic actor. And he has that on-screen likable presence that just will win over anybody that watches him.
Yeah, like we really should do School Ties eventually on Back to the Balcony, because that is a very underrated and underseen film from the 90s, especially when he has a chance to use his dramatic chops in the film, for sure. And it's interesting too, because now that he's done the podcast circuit and he's been on Howard Stern and stuff like that, he was up for Superman in the early 2000s, man. And I feel like he would be the perfect Superman. But the reason why he said that he didn't do the audition as well as he thinks he should have is because he realized the weight of being Superman is on your career afterwards. And he's not wrong. Christopher Reeve, hey, he did a lot of great movies, but we always think of him as Superman. Henry Cavill's dealing with it right now, you know? He's doing some good stuff. We still think of him as Superman. And then this new guy, who knows? Maybe he has to play Superman for like the next 20 years, because is he going to get anything else after that? I get it. I think he made the right decision, although I really would have liked to have seen him as Superman.
You almost have to have the idea that I'm doing this role for the paycheck. If the movie's successful, I'm set for life with that franchise. And it's like that with DC or Marvel to an extent. So you're always going to have that problem with actors coming out of that role where you have to do something that impacts to get audiences and viewers out of that mindset. So it's one of those that I'm glad he didn't, because it would have ruined a perception of what he does next. So I think it was a brilliant choice, even though I kind of still would have loved to see him as Superman.
Okay, so we brought 4 films to the High School Royale 2025. It's time to rank them from our favorite to our least favorite. I have a feeling yours are going to be pretty obvious. You had a lot of disdain for my films, and I'm not saying that you have a lot of love for both of your films, but I'm going to let you go first. Where do you rank these 4 films from best to worst for High School Royale 2025?
It's going to be tough, and I'm trying to be fair, but the principal will have to be first, just for the overall entertainment value, filmmaking, all that stuff. ENCINO Man, it's pure entertainment value. I can turn that on and just watch it with my eyes closed and almost recite lines. So for the fun factor, it has to be ENCINO Man. Tough Turf, James Spader, up next. And good God.
Dangerously close last.
Dangerously close last. That one is, out of all the movies you picked, I love you to death. I really do. But that one, that was a chore to get through. So
You like Massacre at Central High better than Dangerously Close?
I will say it because there are more things that I admitted during that episode, like the kill scenes, that I like
the kill scenes
versus anything here.
The hang gliding scene's pretty awesome. Yeah, I give you that. That's true. Okay, so for me, I have a very different list than you, and I'm not being biased because of my picks. I'm going to be very honest here. I'm going to be very objective about my choices. Number 1, yeah, it's The Principal. 100% it's The Principal. In fact, I'm pissed that I didn't bring that one and that you did. So number one's a principle for me. Number two, sorry, dude, Dangerously Close. I just got a boner for Dangerously Close. I can't tell you what it is other than I like it. I own it. I will watch it again. I think it's kind of a mini masterpiece in its own realm. I'm not going to put it up against a lot of the other films on my shelf, but for what it is and when it came out and for how it looks, I think it's fucking great. Tough Turf, number 3 for me, dude. Sorry. I'm a huge Tough Turf fan. I accept its flaws. I love its flaws. It is that baby that I will not throw out with the bathwater because I love everything about it. And just because Encino Man is number 4 on my list doesn't mean I hate it. I'm not going to watch Encino Man for a long time. I don't like Dave. Fuck Dave. He's an asshole. And if I'm going to watch a Pauly Shore movie, I'm watching Son-in-Law, right? And if I'm going to watch a Brendan Fraser movie, it's going to be Blast from the Past, Bedazzled, or George of the Jungle. If I'm looking for that comic relief, that funny kind of Brendan Fraser. That's not to say that Encino Man's a bad movie. It's just number 4 on my list. I'm not going to watch it again anytime soon.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think we both agree the principal is a great watch for kind of our back to school here. And, it's one of those that it's hard to balance what's good. It's entertainment factor. It's just personal relatability to this character or an actor, whatever it may be. But you know what? My list, I go for what is going to be something that I can just pop on, turn on, and be thrilled or entertained. And I think we have the principle we agree on, but complete opposites on everything else.
And like I've apologized so many times in this podcast to actors that I've talked mad shit about over the years before I had a podcast, just in conversation. Huge reevaluation of Jim Belushi. I don't know. Like, for some reason, the dude just always rubbed me wrong for like the last 30 years. But now as I'm going back and I'm revisiting his catalog, I was like, God damn, he's really good in Curly Sue. Like, I love Curly Sue because of him. I don't believe for a second that Kelly Lynch falls in love with him, but I like him in it, right? And then this one, I'm like, dude, I really like Jim Belushi in this movie. And we already talked about doing a dog month, so we got to put Canine on there, right? And then I just watched Red Heat not too long ago. Got the Blu-ray, rewatched it. I'm like, God damn, Jim Belushi's good in this too. I owe him an apology. My big apology from several years ago was Steve Guttenberg, where I've been shitting on Steve Guttenberg my entire life. And then I started rewatching all these Steve Guttenberg movies. I just watched Cocoon the other night. Like, do I really like Steve Guttenberg? I think I do. Why did I hate this guy for so long? And now I realize, like, he's so good. The Bedroom Window, he's so good. He's the best one in 3 Men and a Baby. He is so good in Cocoon. And Can't Stop the Music. He roller skates down Times Square, man. He is a legend. So yeah, I think I have to go down my list of actors that I've been talking mad shit about my entire life and give them all reevaluations, because Guttenberg and Belushi, man, are 2 for 2, where I'm like, I think these might be like some of my favorite actors now. And I've been hating on them for years. And I don't know why.
It takes that one experience or that one role to almost give a perception, but you put an element in there, like a little girl in Curly Sue or Cocoon, where you have this sentimental, it's hard not to get attached to the story of Cocoon with Gutenberg. So I think It's that the roles they pick to give a different perception of it. So I think I would love to see your amends list coming out, and I'm sure that would be an hour long. So, but
that might be something we have to put on the list of episodes, because I'm doing it with the directors too, man. Like, there's directors that I've been like shitting on for years, and now I'm like, oh, was that movie actually really good? And I just was hating it because it was cool to hate it at the time. Boondock Saints still sucks. That's still my number one opinion. It's still my least favorite movie of all time. But I'm saying there are other directors on the list where I'm like, maybe I got to go back and rewatch some of their films, Maybe Michael Bay's a genius and I just haven't accepted it yet.
Well, you can even take good films. I mean, it'll be a cold day in hell when I give amends to Glenn Powell. So that guy just sucks. The movies are great, though.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's true. Anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole we don't have time to get down. So, everyone, we hope that you enjoyed 2025's High School Royale Face Off. I'm glad we brought these movies, even though they may not be as good as some of the other movies talked about. It's really hard to compete with Angus, Class of 84, Mr. Holland's Opus, My Bodyguard. It's hard to compete with those. But I think the point of this episode is we brought some films to the table, just minus Encino Man, that a lot of people probably either have forgotten about or haven't seen. You know, Dangerously Close and Tough Turf are kind of like under the radar. And The Principal, definitely under the radar, right? Like, I think more people remember the box art of the video than they've actually seen the movie. So go watch the movie. And go watch these movies and tell us what you think about our opinions of these films. And and then start giving us some suggestions for 2026. I know it's a year away, but this year flew by, so it may as well be tomorrow. All right, and with that, we are saying thank you for joining us. Good night. Please go and subscribe to our podcast, Back to the Balcony, where we critique the critiques of Siskel and Ebert. We have a lot of fun over there. We've had a lot of great episodes recently. We've been doing underrated sequels. We did RoboCop 2. We did Star Trek 5. We did Baby's Day Out, and we're jumping into the Halloween season, so get ready to hear our takes on all the spooky movies that Siskel and Ebert reviewed. Justin, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. You can find your show over at
anywhere you listen to podcasts, at The Movie Wire, and you can check me out on themoviewire.com.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.